Thanks, Amber. Hi, everybody. My name's Steve Gilhool, and I'm a postdoc at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. Next slide, please, Amber. Today, I'm going to be talking about my research that I'm doing as part of the BioData Catalyst Fellows Program, which is a rare variant analysis of Latino and African American asthmatics. The motivation behind this project is simply that asthma is the most common chronic childhood condition. It's highly heritable, but that heritability has not been completely accounted for. And asthma is more prevalent and severe among certain minority populations. So our goal is to discover rare sources of variation that are associated with asthma in these traditionally understudied populations. Next slide, please. So the data we're using is coming from the TopMed program. There are 4 studies that I've applied for listed here. And in total, there's about 16,000 samples. And as you can see from the chart, it's primarily African-American and about a third Latino, and then a smattering of others and Caucasians. Next slide, please. So the approach we are taking is to, since it's a rare variant analysis, we, as shown in the schematic on the left-hand side, do the ordinary calling of variants, and then filter down to just the most potentially damaging variants, and then perform some sort of grouping prior to doing the association. So the specific method we're using is the STAR procedure, which stands for, I actually forget the exact, it's variant, set, test, and I believe annotation for associations. So I apologize, I don't know the full acronym. But basically what it does is it allows you to incorporate multiple functional and quantitative annotations at once, and then provides, and then outputs like a combined score. It uses the various collapsing tests such as burden test and ACAT and SCAT, and combines them into an omnibus score. All right, next slide. And so far, we've only been able to run it on one of the 4 data sets. So just a cohort of about 4,400 African-American patients. And so kind of as expected with the small sample size, we didn't find any significant results, but we are scaling up to a larger, to the full data set. So this is just sort of the prototype work so far. All right, and next slide, please. So what a large number of components of the BioData Catalyst ecosystem have been used so far. So the first one in the list here it is the sort of top left bubble. This is BioData Catalyst powered by Gen 3. That allowed us to, with basically the click of a button, import the TopMed data into the BioData Catalyst powered by Terra workspace. So that's where I've done the bulk of my analysis. At the same time, I've used the 7 Bridges platform, which is the sort of other major cloud analysis platform. It's very, Terra and 7 Bridges both have a lot of similar functionality, but they each have their own specific functions. And the one on 7 Bridges that I've used is the Annotation Explorer. So this allowed me to perform the variant annotation and filtering and aggregation very easily. So I used the Annotation Explorer to create these files that I also imported into the Terra workspace. And the Terra workspace is where I did the bulk of the analysis, using both the interactive notebooks for exploring the data and creating phenotype files and running PCAs and all that stuff. And then the workflows, which are importable from DocStore, also not listed here, Broad Methods repository, and also Terra featured workspaces. Those are all sources where you could get a workflow that somebody else has written, imported into your workspace, and then run a large batch job to process your data. So specifically, I used workflows to convert VCF files to GDS files so that they could be input into the STAR workflow. And the STAR workflow was actually implemented by another BioData Catalyst fellow named Sheila Gaynor. So just wanted to give her a shout out for her hard work, that's all. Okay, next slide, please. So what helped me accomplish my research was largely looking at the documentation every time I wanted to do something, trying to find out how it's done. Almost everything that I wanted to do was in the documentation. I think given the complexity of the BioData Catalyst ecosystem, the documentation is really quite good. But then the rest of the help came from people. So other BioData Catalyst fellows have helped. For example, I reached out to Sheila Gaynor about the STAR workflow when I was running into issues, and she was very gracious and helped me a lot. There are also fellows interest groups where we meet around a particular topic, and just the sort of serendipitous conversations have helped me find out things that I needed to know that I didn't know I needed to know. And then reaching out to the support teams, both Terra and Seven Bridges have excellent teams that are waiting to help. And BDC3 overall can help with other questions, or will route your question to the appropriate support team. Next slide, please. So my advice is to basically experiment a lot. I think I was a little bit precious with my attempts at running workflows at the start, because I wasn't sure if I would incur too many costs. But the starting credits, I think it's $500, it may be $300. I think it goes a long way. So if you appropriately do a small chunk of your work, I started running things on a single chromosome instead of the full genome. It really does go a long way. And I think the only way to really learn how this all works is just by doing. I do recommend there are some steps that you can take to either set up a budget that will alert you if you've spent too many credits. And there's also a cost reporting feature that will, with a small delay, tell you how much each workflow cost. So those are very useful to do. And reaching out to other people for help is super important. As I mentioned, the support teams are really wonderful. And read the documentation. I said reread the documentation because I often found that when I finally found the answer I was looking for, I had actually found it previously but forgotten it. It's just kind of it's a very powerful but commensurately complicated system. So it's, in my experience, I've learned a lot of things and then forgotten them and then relearn them. So I really suggest keep going back to that documentation well, and then be patient, because a lot of things are going to fail, but I haven't run into a failure that I couldn't turn into a success yet. So you just kind of have to plug away, and yeah, gradually I think things will work out. I think most of this advice is just general to research in general, but I found it very helpful in this particular project. So that's all I have to say on my experience thus far, and I'd be happy to take questions if we have time. I'm not sure if we have time. So.
Yeah, so we could, oh, I went a little too far, sorry. We can take questions if anybody has them immediately. Otherwise, we will have discussion time at the end. And we can also, you can also send your questions in the chat directly to Steve, and he can answer them there as well. So if anybody has a quick question, we can take about 1 or 2 minutes. Otherwise, discussion at the end or in the chat.
Yeah, I have a question. Why you focus on only a rare variants? Did you check the common variant as well, or is there any effect coming on that?
So I believe some work has been done on the common variants. So it was kind of to not duplicate efforts, and because I believe the rare variants are just sort of uncharted territory. So that's the main reason. I think there's also reason to believe that rare variants could be more population specific. So we may be able to find something that's particularly penetrant in one of these groups. So that's
and do you think admixture mapping would be a better choice? I assume you use just self-reported, not ancestrally determined.
So that's a good question. I'd have to, so in the analysis itself, we used the principal components as covariates, and we didn't actually use the self-report, although we do, there is, a field that lists the sort of categorical race, but I'm not sure if that's determined from the principal components or from self-report. But in any case, that particular field did not go into the analysis itself.
Thank you.
Thanks for the questions.